Chris, back in the RV.
Permanently for the moment. EF1 tornadoes are the reason.
Did you get kicked out of your house again, Chris?
Yeah, sometimes she just says, you got to go.
Yeah, I hear you. You should probably leave a key out so that I have a place to go when my wife does that.
All I can do is I just give you the code. Well, you always have it.
Even better. Yeah. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, something like that. Come on, what's memorable? I got to remember too much stuff.
Yeah, especially at our advanced age. So says our gray hair. Anyway,
yes,
and glasses.
Sir. Yes.
Well, it's good to be back, Chris. I'm super excited about our guest today. I say that every week, but I really am excited this week. I've gotten to know him a little bit. You know him very well.
Yes.
And that is Brad Estes from Cytex Ortho. So, Chris, why don't you give us a little background on Brad, and then we will bring him in to the studio with all the fanfare that our guests should expect on the MedTech Jam session.
And deserve.
I should have said deserve. You're right.
Yes. And so I've known Brad for a while, and he's a PhD. Cytex Ortho is based in the Research Triangle of Raleigh, Durham. And he's got some amazing technology that is way past due for the best treatment for patients. Brad has a very diverse background, especially as it relates to spine and other areas of musculoskeletal. And he brings a take no prisoners approach to how he runs his business and how he faces the challenges that any founders deal with when it comes to the regulations that we deal with in the United States, especially when it comes to ortho and spine products. Really good guy, great team. His wife is part of the team as well. They are running a great ship, and they're going to be changing the game potentially for a lot of patients that are earlier and earlier getting total hips. I mean, you think about this, Mike. When I started at Richards in '89, the average age for total hip was about 59 or so. And that number has shifted definitively to an earlier age. And Brad will tell you, he gets calls all the time from people in their 40s going, they've told me I got to have a hip. Is your stuff ready? And it's just so tough. It's hard to believe that we're this far into the industry and that the continuum of care hasn't been filled out well enough from inception of OA joint pain. A little bit of that on Brad, and it's exciting to be affiliated with him. It's excited to be watching the progress that's happened since I've been with him in the last three and a half years.
All right, here we go. All right, let's welcome to the MedTech Jam session our friend Brad Estes. Hey, Brad.
Brad.
Hey, guys. Real quickly, it's Brad Estes.
Brad Estes. Sorry.
Just to get the name. Just to get the name right.
The easiest way to remember this, Mike, is Brad's email, because we want people to be able to reach out to Brad, especially patients that want to be in trials. But it's Besties.
Besties.
Yes.
Well, thanks for joining the Besties.
Ortho.com. It works, right?
It works. It's memorable, and you get the pronunciation correct.
Figure why not? Before we get started, let's just get the pronunciation right.
Yeah, well, as somebody whose last name is mispronounced many times, when I was in college, my last name, of course, is Donahue. I was called Mike Donut. Of course, that was my drunk neighbor down the hall, but
yeah, probably.
I hear you. So my apologies, Brad Estes.
Okay.
Thank you for being a Besties. Well, Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're building? Give us a little bit of the background information, Brad, on you and kind of what you're working on right now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, guys. This is gonna be a fun conversation, so I've been looking forward to it. So the company is called Cytex Ortho. We are working on early joint disease and providing solutions for patients that currently don't have any. We're talking about the 25, 35, 45, and even the 55-year-old that comes and sees the doc, says, I have some joint pain, and they take an x-ray and look at it and go, yeah, it looks like some early osteoarthritis. Take some ibuprofen and we'll prescribe some PT to you. And when you can't stand anymore, we'll replace your joint. Then that patient's on this 7 or 8 year trajectory of living with more and more chronic pain and increasing disability with the only solution at the kind of the end of their rope. And that's just not a good solution for the patient. I mean, it is a solution, but it's not a good solution. And we're working in that space where we can intervene early on and give them their life back is what we're trying to do by restoring their joint tissues, not replacing, but restoring. And that's what we're building here at Cytex Ortho.
That's a tough nut to crack.
It is.
As somebody who's a person of a certain age and who's fighting arthritis
Yeah.
in multiple joints. But I'm still very active and want to continue to be as active as I can for as long as I can.
And that's just it. I mean, it resonates with so many people. I mean, if you look at the 30 plus million Americans under the age of with so many under the age of 65 dealing with hip disease and joint disease in general, it hits all of us. And doesn't, everybody knows somebody that's had a premature joint replacement. And I put anybody premature in that active under 65 age.
Thank you for that, by the way, because that describes me.
You got it, man.
We're already, we get the ARP cards, and for older adults above 55, and it's hurtful, Brad.
It's a deflator.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's some things we can do. I think we just have to keep pushing there, and we're trying.
Well, I applaud you for trying to solve that problem. As I said, it's a tough nut to crack. So talk to us a little bit, Brad, about how you are uniquely solving it. Kind of give us a little bit of the science, and why do you think you've got it potentially figured out?
Yeah, I guess I will start with a little bit of my background. I started at Medtronic, even at the companies of Danik and Sophomore Danik that were acquired by Medtronic, and just kind of grew up in the heyday of spine, like I would call, and just learned from some of the greats in terms of research and development and taking products from inception to market, and lots of cool devices, even on the team that did Infuse and BMP2, more on the device side, but really saw the potential for biologics and orthopedics and how that could change the game. And we all know the story of Infuse. So, but then shifted about 8 years into my career at Medtronic. It was time to do something different, and just was really driven by innovation in orthopedics. And so I quit my job at Medtronic, enrolled in a PhD program at Duke, and got to study from under one of the best in the world, a guy named Fars Gilak, who's now a professor at WashU in St. Louis. And just got to learn the regenerative medicine, the tissue engineering, the orthobiologics, if you will, stem cells, genetic manipulation of cells, and even mechanics down to the DNA level. And just got to take my development hat off for a little while and just do some basic science, which was so much fun. And I got to learn just a ton working under him. But I never really could take my development hat off. So as we were working in the lab, a few things started happening, and we realized we had kind of this concoction brewing where we could start treating arthritis. I mean, people had done many things for treating focal defects in cartilage for years, but they were largely ineffective, and you could effectively maybe treat something that's really small diameter and a focal defect in the knee. Not exactly game changing, but useful. But we had technology that we could recreate the mechanical properties of the cartilage from day one, but in a way that complemented the native biology. And that kind of started us off on our journey to, let's see if we can develop this. And this is my development hat that I kept putting back on even during my science days. And that's what we did. And I'm happy to go into more of the story and how we did that. But that was the start of it. And then we had technology that could deal with arthritis in general and not just deal with focal defects.
That's great.
So how did you go about testing that preclinically? I mean, you say you've got something that can treat preclinical arthritis. How did you talk about the sort of steps, the development steps?
Yeah. So the secret sauce that was ours that kind of was enabling to start treating large scale arthritic defects or lesions in the joints was a three-dimensionally woven structure. And for those watching, there's a SEM of it over my right shoulder. And we're actually weaving in 3 dimensions, which is pretty cool by itself. We didn't invent 3D weaving. That was around before, but the way we applied it is unique. And so you can think of three-dimensional weaving as traditional basket weaving. You're kind of going over under. Everybody can picture a basket weave, but we're dealing with multiple layers of X fibers coming into the loom. So X is X's, and then we're layering Y's in with it. And then we're taking a Z fiber, and then we're incorporating it through the entire structure like this. And that's what you see in that image behind me. And so what that enabled us to do is by picking the right material and the right spacing between those fibers and building the right thickness, you can start to tune it to the mechanical properties of the tissue you're trying to replace. And so our first paper was in Nature that showed that we can take that structure behind me and tune it to match the mechanical properties of our articular cartilage, but do it in a way that's super friendly to cells and super friendly to complement the biology in the joint. That was the difference maker between what we had done and what people had done before us, because this was in the heyday of tissue engineering when we came up with this idea where people were taking hydrogel, think Jello for by and large, okay?
Right.
And the thought process was we can take Jello, we can make cells with it, maybe throw a few cool growth factors and think like infused BMP2 and different molecules like that. We can create tissue in the body. That was pretty much the mindset. And what you'd get is these cool looking images that look like articular cartilage, but had no mechanical properties whatsoever. And so that was largely a failure. And still that paradigm exists today, but it just doesn't work. And conversely, people were taking from a fully synthetic approach. Let's make these gels that are super tough and they're rigid and they can recreate the mechanical properties of the joint, but they do so in a way that doesn't work with the native biology. So they fell for a different reason. It's a durability longevity question for those. And what we did is we married the two. As far as I know, we're the only ones that have approached it this way. A mechanically competent implant that supports integration and ultimately gives way to the native biology in the joint. And that's what we've shown in multiple animal studies now, that we can implant these and then they fill with cells, the cells infiltrate, they proliferate, they differentiate, they synthesize new tissue. And we've shown within a year that new tissue is functioning as the native tissue in the joint and the implant's getting out of the way. And that's just one of the things that we didn't equivocate on. It's harder, yes, because it's absorbable material, but we were convinced that we need the implant to do the job and then get out of the way for long-term success. And that's the way we approach the problem.
Hi, listeners. As a medtech leader, you know how hard it is to scale up your sales team and prepare them for a successful product launch. If your reps are still digging through cumbersome shared drives and web portals, clicking through an LMS that no one uses, or relying on email newsletters to stay current, it's time for a change. Your reps, they're on the move. They need on-the-go content and a single source of truth. And that's where Convey Connect comes in. It's a mobile-first, company-branded app that gives your sales team instant access to training, sales tools, and company updates all in one place. At Convey Connect, we can have your customized, white-labeled mobile app deployed to the app stores in just a few weeks, so your sales team is resourced and aligned to win. So if you're scaling your team or prepping for a big launch, please check out conveymed.io, schedule a quick demo. We would love to show it to you. So now back to the show.
That's great. Yeah, something, Brad, as you think about just the sheer need out there, right? Think about the continuum a little bit and think about the fact of what you're experiencing in real time relative to the outreach of individuals that are coming at you for this need. And why is a total hip not the best thing for a 40-something or younger patient?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. You know, what the data that just keep resonating to me, it's like 28% of the patients getting total hip replacements right now are under the age of 55. And over 50% are under the age of 65. And you're absolutely right. This procedure, it's a phenomenal procedure for the right patient. If you're 75 and sedentary, I mean, heck, if you're 65 and sedentary, it's a good operation. But it's not a great operation for the patient who wants to remain active. And that's for two reasons. One, it requires a drastic lifestyle change to maximize the longevity of the implant. And I feel like this is not exactly fully disclosed to a lot of these patients, because I've talked to some of these patients who've had early joint replacements. But you're fighting a battle here of you want to stay active, but the more active you are, the quicker you're going to wear out that implant. So it's a game that you're playing with your joint, and it's not a fun game to be playing, I'm sure. But the other problem is, and this kind of goes right alongside that, is these patients don't want the drastic lifestyle change now, but they also have fear for their future selves, if I can put it that way. If they want to remain active, and many do, and we all know that patients will push the limits on their prosthesis. They do, and that's just human nature. But that revision procedure, it's not going to be as effective as that first one. They're going to have less ability to do the things they want to. and they're going to have less range of motion too.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're trying to go to the gym at age 55 or 60 and they want to lift weights, well, they're going to be severely compromised in what they can do because of that implant. And again, it's not a great procedure for that patient. And we want to pretend that it is, and we want to push it towards these younger and younger patients. I mean, I think there's the stats over the last 2 decades, there's been a 200% increase in patients under 65 getting total joint replacement. So that's hip and knee, but that is not a good trend, but that's the trend we're going on. And the reason that trend exists is because there are no other solutions.
That's right. To that point, I mean, this is not a underwhelming task that you are taking on, and you should be massively applauded for that. And the team, and I've had a chance to meet many of them. They're exceptional. The thing I was going to mention in this regard as well is you got some runway ahead of some work to be done, right? And as it relates to the pilot and then pivotal trial and so on and so forth, what are you looking at in terms of what's it going to take to get you there monetarily? Let's just focus on the right now monetarily and the eventual commercial launch when Mike and I and you are probably 60.
Right. Yeah, totally. The time's flying, right?
It is flying.
Time marches on.
It doesn't stop for
The heavy
anybody.
hand of time, as I like to say.
Oh man, that's true. That's true. Well, let me answer that question, Chris, just by taking a brief step back and talking about how we got to where we are, because we're entering clinical trials right now, and we're starting a phase 1 clinical trial, which is a safety trial. It's going to be a 15-patient study at 2 sites in the U.S., and happy to talk about that more. But we have gotten to this stage largely, almost predominantly through NIH grant funding, and we will probably surpass $22 million. We're at over 18 now, but we'll surpass $22 million in grant funding this year to do the work we've done. So we've been incredibly efficient with our finances. We've been capital efficient. We've been frugal. We've used the money well to get to this point, even to the point where the trial is mostly being funded by NIH funds. We're going to have to raise some capital to finish that and get that second site on board. But we've done everything we can to bootstrap, to kind of crawl and claw and do everything we can to get to those huge inflection points that we need to get to with grant funding. But we need to bring in some professional capital right now too. And we need capital partners that believe in what we're doing and are there for the 4 to 5 years it's going to take to get this to market. It's not a quick play, but I think it's worth it because it is transformational what we're trying to do. And we're trying to provide solutions for patients that don't have any. And hips are just the start. I mean, we are starting at the hip, but with our technology and the way we're manufacturing, which is part weaving, as I described before, part textile and part 3D printing, and I can talk about that later too. It's a true platform technology that we'll be able to leverage, but we need the right partners to help us get there. So right now, we're currently raising a $3 million bridge round just to get to that key inflection point of that first in human clinical study, 15 patients, getting to that 6 months to 1 year follow-up so we can ready for the pivotal. And the name of the game is just getting to that pivotal as quickly as possible, enrolling that pivotal as quickly as possible. And that's what gets us to market. And that time frame is 4 to 5 years, no matter how you slice it. But that's the game we're playing right now. Just get to that next inflection point with as little money as possible. And then, but we do need the money. And we're not going to be able to do the pivotal trial without some real money coming in. I funded as much as I can on grants. I can do a lot of development, but I cannot do a pivotal trial on grants. And I know that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's amazing because even if you think about it, right, since the time that we've been working together, and everybody knows my mantra is I don't work with anybody unless they have disruptive technology or disruptive business model. That one of the big things is that was 7 and 8 years to launch, right? And you look at we're 4 at 5, that just continues to breed confidence in what you're going to see. I mean, the dog trial that you did in and of itself was something that I think is worth a little bit of commentary. What did you see?
So we've done a couple of different dog studies right now, and some people always look at me and go, why'd you do hip and why did you do canine? And I'm like, well, those are great questions. And when we started out, we were looking at potentially doing knee first or hip, or we were kind of agnostic on it, but we're in the Research Triangle Park area. And so there's some great academic institutions. We're out at Duke. That's where the technology came from. And we were working with a veterinary surgeon at NC State whose expertise was canine, hip, and pain, and understanding that in an everyday practice. And so we wrote a grant early on with him. This was probably in 2014, 2015. And we wrote this grant to do this study in the canine model to put it in the hip and see if we can get these animals back to their activity levels. And the beauty about the canine model is versus goat or sheep is what you normally see in cartilage repair stuff is that for hips specifically, the load orientation across the hip is similar to humans. The blood supply is similar to humans. They get naturally occurring disease like humans, and they have the same degree of freedom as humans. And you can measure the happiness, if you will, or the activities in daily living in the gait of a dog that you can't measure in a goat. You just can't do it. And so we designed this study, and it was kind of serendipity because you can't study every permutation of your implant before you go start putting in these large animal models. And with grant funding, it's one of these great things, but grant funding has this discrete time frame associated with it. You have so much time to spend the money and you got to spend it. And so we tried all these things and getting ready for it, making permutations and changes to the implant, looking at different permutations and different things to the implant. And then finally, we just had to just go with it. And we did a tissue engineering group in this study, and we just knocked it out of the park. And without going into all the details of the study, if I could have sketched out the results of this study beforehand in terms of the gait of the dogs, for the activity levels of the dogs, their happiness level, their ability to run around in the yard, all that stuff, it's exactly how I would have sketched it out. But that's what we showed in this study, that these animals within 3 months were behaving perfectly normally, and the osteoarthritis controls remained lame throughout the entire study period. And we actually published that study. It's in Science Advances. So we got it in a really great journal, and that data is out there, but it shows what we can do with our implant. And that was really the key study that kind of set us on our trajectory of solving hip disease. And the clinical advisors that are working with us are really grateful for that too, because lots of people are focused on the knee, but there isn't anyone else focused on the hip right now. And I think it's a great opportunity to change the way hips are treated, especially with all these hip preservation centers popping up everywhere. There's a lot of hip disease out there, and there's need for solutions inside the joint space, not just these extra articular solutions that are currently being delivered right now. So anyway, that's a lot.
But it's good.
Tell there too.
It's a critical one.
Going back on your regulatory strategy, sounds like you're doing a pilot trial and you'll do an IDPMA. I'm curious to know, why should investors not be worried about that? Why should they actually think this is a good thing, that you're walking down this path and not taking, a simple 510K route is not available to you, but I think some investors in today's world are like, whoa, that's a long time and there's risk, and they're not wrong, but why? What is your response to that?
Yeah, they're not wrong. I mean, I go back to the patient. I really do. What's motivated us from the beginning is that patient journey and the patients that call us day in and day out saying, I need a solution. It's like you were talking about before, Mike. I want to stay active. I want to be able to interact with my grandkids, or heck, my children for that matter. I want to keep running. I want to keep cycling. I want to do rock climbing. And we hear from those patients all the time. And right now they're kind of desperate. I mean, they're going to great lengths, getting steroid injections or HA injections or PRP, or most of the patients that call me, they just got back from the Caymans and spent $40,000 to get who knows what injected into their hip.
Right.
And so I just feel for that patient, and there's just a growing population of patients that need solutions. And we're doing the whole orthopedic industry a disservice if we don't address that patient. And we like to pretend that patient is not there, and we can just say, wait, that 8 years until you're properly indicated for a total joint replacement, and we can fix you then. But nobody wants to hear that. I mean, who wants to waste 8 years of their life popping ibuprofen and spending hours a day in PT? Nobody.
Yeah.
And so there's an opportunity there, but unless we take some risks and take some chances, that patient will still be there at the end of the day, still struggling. And I just don't think that's the right way to handle it.
We're never going to see anything transformational with the current 510K system because
Nope.
by definition, it's substantially equivalent.
Yeah.
How
I
can
mean-
you have something substantially different or better if
Right.
your measure is substantial equivalence? And so I applaud you for doing this. Sounds like you've sort of put in the hard yards and the hard work with all the preclinical work that you've done
Right.
to get to a point where you've de-risked it enough so that you feel very confident in your first in human cases and then your follow-on pivotal trial
Right.
that you're going to see success.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, our clinical advisors say, Brad, if we can recreate what you showed in your canine studies, and I just described one canine study, we did another one following up on that, doing some different experimental groups and just showed the same results. But our clinical advisors say, if we can do that in the patient, that's an amazing feat. And I think we can. We just have to get there. And we're there. So Mike, to your point, we've de-risked it. Getting an IDE approved for FDA is a huge accomplishment.
Huge.
I mean, from the implant manufacturer to just controlling the process from A to Z, even the sourcing from A to Z, all the animal testing, all the biocomp work, all the mechanical testing. I mean, that's just a mountain that we climbed to get there. And that's just hats off to this team. I mean, I have a team that just refuses to quit, refuses to say no, and they just keep going. I mean, they're incredible. And I think that speaks to the team of how we've been just responsible financially with the grant funds and incredibly innovative to get to this point and creative to use those funds to get here. Because people have told me a long time, you can't get this far on grant funds. But here we are. I mean, we got this far and we're so close, and we just need some help to get it over the finish line. But the opportunity is just huge. So I think it's a risk worth taking.
In the entire market as it relates to the opportunity for investors to participate alongside, right, and really bring a meaningful solution, it could really have powerful impact on the way these investors think in the future.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be a mind shift. There has to be a mind shift. And we can't keep thinking about just the monetary side. It's got to be about the whole win. And when you think about this, you know, this applies to the strategics too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their ability to strategically invest in what's going to change the industry is something they should really be paying attention to. Are you getting the vibe that they are?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm not getting the vibe that they are right now. And I've talked to a lot of the strategics, and I get the hesitancy. I get the reticence to come in early. And I know these guys are inundated with requests all day. And so I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is not making any bets. And I think that's the challenge. I mean, if you look at, let's just talk about innovation in orthopedics for a second. If you want to look at the PMA database in orthopedics, and just query the PMA database. I did this not too long ago. Just set aside a few minutes one day and go do this. It won't take you that long. Just take you a few minutes. Do a query of the PMA database for original PMAs in orthopedics and go back like 6 or 7 years. You're going to get an average of less than 2 a year. You'll get about 10 over the last 5 or 6 years. And if you look at what's out there, there's just nothing that screams at you innovation. There are some things there. You got the CardiHeal Agili-C implant. You got some motion preserving spinal prostheses in there for spine work. You got some prostheses for amputees and some electrical stimulation type devices. So I'm not saying there's no innovation, but if we compare that to cardiovascular, you'll get 10, 12 a year, right? Mm-hmm. And so by any definition, if we don't call innovation something that's not a 510K, there's just not there, guys.
Yeah.
And I think the strategics have the ability to change it. And
Yes.
And I hear it all the time. They're patient centric. They want to talk about the patient. Robotics is supposed to be, and AI is being used to have a better experience for the patient. Agree on both those counts, 100%. But if we want to offer better solutions, they're going to have to spend some money and make earlier bets to get some of these technologies like what we're working on to the market. I don't think the VCs are going to do it. I mean, when I talk to VCs, I was talking to a guy that's been in, we all know him, I won't mention his name, but he's been in medtech VC for 30 plus years. And he looked at me and said, Brad, I don't know any VCs that invest in orthopedic medtech ID PMA products. And I'm like, ouch, that hurts.
Yeah.
But to Chris, to your point, I think there needs to be some successes too. Until we show some successes and you get some big exits, $300 million, $500 million exits for companies like ours that went the hard road and did the work and dug in and made it happen, I think you're still gonna get the same attitude. So part of it's on us. We got to go prove that we can do it and that it's worth it. But ultimately, these guys are going to have to play the game.
And as I recall, one of the big things that we've heard is every single strategic thinks what you're doing is great.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, keep us posted. I call it chronic fence sitting. It's like, and we do, and like understand it, and we keep them posted, and we say, well, let us know when you get your large animal data. And we get our large animal data. Well, it'd be great if that were a GLP study. Okay, here's the GLP study. Well, once you get the biocomp, make sure that all your material sourcing and your final implants meet all the rigorous testing requirements of FDA. Then we might be interested in, well, here that is. Well, what about your first patients? Well, what about when your patients get to 6 months? I mean, it's just like those goalposts just keep moving. And we just kind of keep our head down and go, okay, I'll keep talking to you guys because I do think they're integral to success. There's no question about it. And ultimately, we'll need somebody like that to step in. But we're just fighting to get to the next inflection point, which now is getting that first patient enrolled is first priority right now. But then we'll just keep digging and clawing from there.
That'll be a big milestone. I'm curious though, if we think about go to the investor community right now, how much is their need for liquidity on the investments and bets they've already made to happen for them before they can reinvest or put more money to work? In other words, I think maybe some of the medtech investments that some investors have made are still kind of out there, and they're waiting for a liquidity event before they can move into either their next fund or they're reserving for those companies that they've already invested in. And so are you hearing that from investors you speak with, Brad?
Yeah, I'm hearing that all over the place. You're spot on with that. I mean, there's not a lot of dry powder in these funds, and they're taking care of their own portfolio, and it's not uncommon for a $500 million company to still be in their portfolio. That's just what we're seeing right now. And these are companies that were supposed to exit already years ago. They were supposed to get a quick return, and they're still having to put more money in to get them to that exit point. And I'm seeing that with angel investors. I'm seeing it with VCs and even family offices to some degree. That's a common refrain that we're getting in this economy. We keep waiting for it to turn, and we keep waiting for those investment dollars that are on the sideline to come in. And it just hasn't happened yet. But last year, this time I was saying, well, hopefully next year. And
the year before.
Earlier this year, they were saying maybe by the end of the year. And maybe that's true. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe we'll start to see it turn. We all know it's cyclical in nature. Yeah. And there's some good things that we're seeing out there that may indicate that it's beginning to change. But there's still a lot of uncertainty, and it's not where it needs to be. But until then, our strategy is to raise some bridge funding, get some grants in the door, and just keep bootstrapping and keep grinding. I mean, what are the options right now? That's the only options that we have, and get to the point where we have multiple investors wanting to come to the table and invest. And that's what we're trying to get to right now.
Well, you should be applauded for your incredible resourcefulness with grant funding. I am overwhelmed and impressed with how much grant funding you've been able to pull in. And I don't want to make this a political point, but there has been a lot of press around NIH grants and other grant sources from mostly the federal government that may be stopped, pulled back. What advice do you have for other founders who are maybe in earlier stage than you are, even that we're almost counting on or looking at grant funding, whether it's SBIR or similar programs like that, to kind of do what you've done, which is to sort of bootstrap and take advantage of that non-dilutive funding? Right. I think from a capital investor standpoint, that is a great testament to the resourcefulness of the team, which is super important for that investor. So can you comment on that? What advice would you have for early stage founders looking at the grant environment today?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit of chaos over the last few months in the grant world. We haven't struggled to pull down any of the funds from our grants. since all these executive orders started coming through. And I think somewhat we were caught a little bit in the crosshairs. I mean, we have been funded by the SBIR program, so it's SBIR, STTR grants over the years. And we continue to take advantage of that program to bring in funds to do the critical work that we need to ultimately get to market. I think the administration was looking at these institutions, the academic institutions that have high overhead rates and large administrative overhead costs. And I think we got caught in the crosshairs a little bit with that, and it's just got applied to all NIH grants. And I think there's some change that's needed there in the large institutions about reducing some of this administrative bloat. So I think some of that's needed. And again, like you said, not to get too political, the way it was handled may not be the best way, but I think inarguably there needs to be some change there. And for us, I mean, we're SBIR program. It's been called America's Seed Fund because it ultimately helps America to keep leading in innovation and tech and healthcare. And that's what we're doing, and ultimately provides jobs. And so that's a key thing. So I don't think the SBIR program is going away. And I think more than ever, it's a good opportunity to use the SBIR program to get funding and to push those early ideas. And because the investors aren't coming in at early stage, so we really need to count on the SBIR program to do that. So I would say just use it. I see it as a good thing, and I see it kind of settling out. And some of the policy overhead rate, I think that'll work itself out so that small companies can do what we did. It's just going to take a little time.
So don't give up yet.
Don't give up yet. I mean, I was talking to investors like we were talking about with the money sitting on the sidelines and
my gosh,
the economy that's out there right now, especially in orthopedic med tech. I mean, it might be a safer bet to go this way. It is slower, and I think that's one of the huge criticisms to it. It is slower, but it is non-dilutive, and it will get you where you want to go. But you do have to be really careful and frugal and capital efficient to use the grants to develop products.
Yeah. Amazing.
Good stuff.
Chris, final thought.
I'll say it this way. With the technology that companies like Cytex Ortho are creating with the Renew Hip implant, these are game changers. These are things that truly can change the quality of life for somebody. We talk about quality of life too loosely, where in reality, you don't really understand it. And that's why, to me, what Brad and the team are doing at Cytex Ortho is inspiring in a lot of ways, right? And to think that even us or our kids, as they're getting older, may never have to dealing with what the 40-somethings, maybe even the 30-somethings are dealing with today. Because I'll be honest with you, if I had a chance at a less invasive implant of this nature and I'm 60, I'm going for that.
100%. Brad, thanks so much for joining. Where, if people want to learn more about Cytex Ortho and how they might want to participate in your company's growth and the exciting things you're building, where's the best place to go? How should they find you?
So cytexortho.com, that's the first place I would send them. And so there's great information there, and we try to keep that updated as much as possible. And there'll be some new information there pretty soon about the clinical trial. And then on LinkedIn, we do a pretty good job of providing latest updates and things that are happening with Cytex Ortho on LinkedIn through my personal account or through the company account. So that's another place people could check us out.
Awesome. Well, this was great. Thanks
stuff.
so much for hanging out with us, Brad.
It was fun, guys.
Love your grit and your resourcefulness and all the things it takes to be a successful founder, CEO, entrepreneur. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Good job. There you go. Thanks again for joining us on this edition of MedTech Jam Session with Chris and Mike D. Please join us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much. See you next time.